United States women involvement in crime, the role of American women in the criminal behavior. Criminal Justice and 20, Nerissa James Professor. So the involvement of women in crime has been always been a great dispute in the justice war. Here in the United States and in the whole world, women has been judged differently for her gender. With the passing of the years, American women got to be treated more alike to men. But with all that, the United States Department of Justice still believes that gender is a special consideration warranting differential treatment. Given women the hero in the justice systems distinct advantages or disadvantages than men as a result of the different circumstances that they present. To understand better behind the essence, the dynamic of the judges is either judge justice for the circumstances and knowing the whole, or judging biasing only for the severity of the crime. In this presentation, we are going to acknowledge the circumstances of the role of American women in crime. Professor Bed from the University of Illinois sees an association between women involvement in the illegal activity and the violence against her. Since the beginning of the history, the feminine character has been misjudged, discriminated, and mistreated. Her function in society was very little compared to the male function. Over the years, that mentality has reduced in a mass. However, is still present in the actually life of Americans. Um, Beth, Professor Beth, says that the understanding of violence against women can be broadened and depend by focusing on the link between gender abuse and women's involvement in illegal activity. Every year, more women has been detected in illicit activity, making many experts think that by controlling the level of violence against her could control the um, the amount of criminal women's too in the United States. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 1 million women in the United States are victims of violence committed by an intimate. In the same fashion, the statistics by the same organization showed that 28.3% of women die at the hands of their husbands, boyfriend, or girlfriend, compared with only 3.6% of men dying by their partners. The most common acts of violence towards women includes domestic and intimate violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment, stalking, sexual exploitation, rape, or of physical assault. A 1996 survey of incarcerated women found that at least half of all female prisoners had experienced some form of sexual abuse before their committing their crime. And more recent studies by the Bureau of Justice System has presented that almost half of all women in jails and prison has been physical or sexually abused before their criminal acts, a much higher rate than reported for the overall population. The National Clearinghouse for the Defense of Battered Women says that women involvement in legal activity reports that more than half of all women in detention had been battered and raped before being incarcerated. A research by Kellerman and Mercy in 1992 indicates that while 60% of female offenders knew their victims, only 20% of males murderers has known their victims, which means that women usually kill um, people they are close to or at least has had contact with them before. Could be exposed children, um, or someone related to their family. However, there have been women that had killed on self-defense. The statistic says that state court judges or juries during 1988 accurate 6% of the husband defendants, compared only to 31% of the wife defendants. Jury trials ended in acquittal for 27% of wives, but not of the husbands. So here we have two different cases of women that has been trial due to self-defense cases. So the first one is Marisa Alexander in 2010. When she had a confrontation or with her husband, she shot a gun down to the wall, and she went to trial and she testified that she felt threatened by her husband, so she wanted only to scare him up a little bit. Alexander grew up on Florida, stand your ground law, and the jury convicted her for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And she was sentenced to 20 years in prison, even though no one was hurt with the gun. Another significant case that, in my personal, I personally think that is really impacting. It's a self-defense case with Sarah Cruzan in 1995. At her age of 16, she was convicted for first degree murder and sentenced to a life without possibility of parole. Her victim was her pimp of 31 years who had begun grooming her at 11 years and trafficked her 4 years. In her case, she wasn't treated at that very moment as a youth. She was treated as a adult for first degree murder. Um, so that's why she got such a harsh time. But then later, she got to only serve 19 years and got a parole due to new policies. Here's the picture for each one of the cases, the criminals for each one of the cases. In both cases, a special role had displayed the functions of social awareness. Public attention performed an important role in the outlet of the case by raising consciousness. Americans funded race campaigns and walk in order to get the attention of the lawmakers. In the case of Roseanne, she was the face for many of the juvenile of the youths who were serving sentences of crimes committed when they were youths, and they got trial as adults. In the other hand, Alexander case promoted a lot of criticism since she was the representation of domestic violence, and as a reality that lots of women feel identified with. In the criminal world, women are more likely to commit minor offenses. And studies show that the largest number of incarcerated women are convicted by drugs, such as nonviolent crimes as a position of selling drugs are known for survival crimes. That's a term that many psychologists and specialists use to define why women get involved in the illicit drugs selling. In other words, women get involved in this path to earn money, um, feed a drug dependent addict, or escape terrifying intimate relationships or brutal social conditions. Some of them are kept in jail for minimum sentences to 20 to 30 years, even if they were never directly involved in drug sales contribution. Even though it's true that most women in jail are due to illicit drugs, there are also some of them who present conspiracy charges behind the bars. There are women who are being guilty of nothing more than living with or not cooperating as an informant against a partner or family member involved in some level of drug sales. Could be either a son or a husband or any other close member. The perception of women as criminals in the US was mild for decades. Since history, talking women and girls were a small proportion of offenders in the population. And also, they didn't involve themselves in delinquent behaviors as often as men do. On the other hand, studies have shown that the women involucrated in criminal acts has increased a lot in the last few years. Most of the reasons involve illicit drugs, as we talked about it before. To understand better their behavior, experts went through the past of some of the criminals. This made them realize that many of them had been physically or mentally abused, or in some cases involucrated in criminal acts by their partners. By knowing this, many nonprofit organizations gather and try to provide help to those women that are victims of all types of violence. These increments of women in jail have also forced lawmakers to make some changes in their politics. Not only that many movements, criticisms, public opinion by America from the whole country have contributed to the sentence of different women's criminal and the implementation of new laws, as it was in the case of Croissant and Alexander. Here are the references. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope it was very helpful.